We got the tech figured out? Yes. Okay, thank you for coming, everyone. I'm not going to have a mic because I'm quite loud, and I think the sound in here will be fine. We are being recorded because our people zooming in, and then we have another guest joining us via Zoom. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Kelsey Szamet, and I'm a partner of a law firm called Kingsley Szamet, LLP. I'm also a native Altadenan. My parents moved to the area in the 1970s. My dad first bought a small house up in the meadows and let his dog run free in the backyard down the canyons. As my parents' family started to grow, they bought a fixer-upper over near the golf course in 1980. And my dad was in that house until 2017, my childhood home. My husband and I then bought in 2018 and moved back in with our two young daughters, one of whom is over there waving to you. She's coming with mom today. So let me tell you a little bit about kind of our January 7th story. I know we all have slightly different versions of it. We actually lost power at 4 o'clock on Tuesday in our neighborhood. And we decided, we're just going to go pick the kids up from school. And we're not going to sleep at home tonight because the winds were worrying us. And we live on a street with really tall deodars. And I've always had these visions, kind of like the Christmas tree lane height trees. My whole life had visions of those trees. And it's worrisome for the girls. So we packed pajamas, toothbrushes, and clothes for the next day. And then we all know the fire broke out around 6:15 on Tuesday. We knew pretty early that there was a serious problem because my father-in-law was living at the senior living community on Washington and Altadena Drive. And we turned on the TV and saw him evacuated to the 7-Eleven parking lot with the embers flying. And my husband got in his car and said, I'm going to get my dad. And I stayed back with the girls, and he called me and he's like, we've never seen anything like this before. It's just a fire tornado. Luckily, my father-in-law was picked up by an ambulance. So my husband was actually able to come back and didn't make it all the way up to him. Then we got a call at about 11 o'clock at night from a neighbor who said your neighbor's front yard is on fire. But someone was able to put it out, and we found out later that it was a neighbor who had stayed behind. So we got the girls to sleep. We stayed up all night, and we got another call at 4:30 in the morning from a neighbor who said, if you don't come now, your house is gone. So my husband decided to go up at around 5 on Wednesday, and there were some neighbors, 4 neighbors that stayed back, and we all know the hoses ran dry around 7 a.m. and they put out spot fires with buckets of pool water that day. Unmasked, without any type of protective gear, which is another concern I think we all have. So our house is standing. We're on Brayburn Road, just west of Allen. I can't say it's because that a few people stayed behind. I think it's, who knows why some structures are standing and some are not, So all the way north of us is pretty much lost. Directly west, all the way down to the golf course, kind of skips a block, and then there's a lot of devastation on Mendocino and Sinaloa. So, obviously standing structures is a little bit of a different dynamic with navigating the insurance in that regard versus a total loss structure. And we can get into that a little bit. The insurance code treats total losses differently and they have to act on a different timeline. But, you know, there's kind of total loss situations, partial loss situations. I think of our house as kind of in the middle where we're standing, but we have extensive smoke damage and soot and ash and having to navigate that process. And then there are folks, the colloquial term, down the hill from us, right? There's folks who are kind of south of New York and south of Washington that are also dealing with some level of remediation. But we know it's impacted the whole community broadly. Altadena, Pasadena, the whole LA community is hurting, and we're overwhelmed and navigating this situation that none of us have ever faced before. You know, we were chatting before we started eating. None of us looked at our insurance policies anytime recently, and we're all now figuring out, most of us are dramatically underinsured. My family too. I think probably 90 to 95% of Altadena is underinsured. Pat might speak to this later, but data shows that typically people are underinsured to the tune of about 50%. And that's not even including what we know might be coming with a surge in material pricing and scrambling for access to contractors and builders and all of those things. So it's a scary problem to be facing, but I think the best way to deal with the overwhelm and anxiety that we're all feeling, you know, I don't know if you guys are sleeping normally again yet or eating again normally yet. I know that I'm not. And I don't think that we're going to start to feel like ourselves again for 6, 8, 10 months, realistically. And I think we need to give ourselves grace and a moment to breathe and try to make the best decisions we can under difficult circumstances, but also not make really big decisions yet about selling land or, you know, figuring out the true cost to rebuild and stuff. We're not going to know that a month away from what happened. We're not. And I know I'm all over the place. You know, I come home and I feel this one way, and I tell my husband, we got to get the hygienists in, we got to get the remediators in, we got to get back in the house as soon as possible. And then 24 hours later, I'm thinking, I have 8 and 10-year-old daughters. What am I thinking? I can't rush to get back home, even though I want that safety and that routine. That's not the decision that's going to be the best for my children, right? My husband's like, you're yo-yoing, and I am, and that's okay. What I tell my daughters is all feelings are okay here, right? Like all feelings are okay. Let's give ourselves grace. So I kind of have a 4-point talk that I'm going to take you through. So number 1 is what we just touched on, is emotional and physical health, and putting that foremost for yourselves. I'm a little bit of a hypocrite. I got to get back into eating more normally. I got to get back into sleeping more normally. I need to set up some telehealth appointments for myself. I know I do. So, you know, please take my advice, try to find someone. My husband actually recently found a telehealth therapist that he's seeing and has really helped. He's talked to him a few times, and he said, after I talk to him, I feel worse, but then I wake up the next morning and I feel a little bit better, right? So be with your family, be with each other, try to eat regularly. All of those basics are important. I think the other thing that is difficult for me, and I hope that we're all practicing, is learning to accept help and lean into what people are willing to do. We haven't had our dogs for 4 weeks. They've been living with someone else. And in the back of my head, I feel so horrible. Someone else is taking care of our dogs, and they're happy to do it, right? Like, it's the least they can do is take care of our dogs while we're displaced with no timeline of when we can go home. So again, I need to take my own advice and just take help. We've been washing underwear at my mom's house for a month. So, like, you know, it's not it's a little embarrassing to be taking your dirty underwear to someone's house, but people are happy to help and we have to accept it. And I think like the third piece of taking care of yourselves is leaning into each other and all of us. I've spent the past 4 weeks in meetings like this on the phone with people, doing video calls, and Altadenans are positive, loving, resilient, smart, creative people. Like every single person I talk to, I'm blown away by what they do professionally or thoughts that they have on how we can rebuild or questions that they have about the legal process, which are really insightful questions. And I hope you guys are seeing that too. I know we're hearing it and feeling it, that this community, we all knew it was special, but I think it's even more special than I ever thought, having grown up here. And all it does is make me want to come back and figure out a positive path forward for the people that want to rebuild, to support them in rebuilding, for the people who ultimately decide 6 or 12 months from now that maybe that's not the right path for them, to support them with love and grace. That's what this is all about, is taking care of each other. And, you know, we wanted to do a lunch to symbolically like nourish each other, break bread, have a meal. So number one is just emotional and mental health. That's the first thing. Number two is housing. We've got to figure out housing. I know we're about a month out. My family was in a hotel for about 3.5 weeks, and the scramble is real for housing, figuring out Airbnbs, leases, all of that, and figuring out what your insurance will pay for, what you can come out of pocket for, all of that. And I don't want to give any specific advice because I know everyone's situation is different. But if you have a total loss and you have an alternative living benefit, the name of the game is making that stretch, right? The name of the game is sitting down and doing the math, trying to find a living situation that's reasonable to realistically plan for that to stretch 36 months. And it's a math problem, right? If your structure is standing, maybe folks aren't going to be out that long, but you do still have to think about what that alternative living benefit you have is and how to use it meaningfully. And I would encourage you, if you're thinking about signing a long-term lease, talk about it with your adjuster if you're insured. So housing is big, and I'm happy to answer questions about that or send you, access to resources if you need it. One thing I'm hearing from a lot of folks that don't have school-age kids is they're moving 15 miles out, 30 miles out, to be able to get an affordable rental. And so if that's an option for you, maybe that's something to consider. So the third kind of piece that we have to focus on is the more administrative piece of what financial resources are available to us. So everyone's got to focus on FEMA and make sure that you get those applications in. There's tons of resources available to help. The resource center is great. Show me a show of hands if you've actually gone to the resource center. It's a great one-stop shop. Good. Okay. So you guys know, I got to go there next week because I'm getting some email about something that SBA needs and I don't even know what they need. So I'm just going to show up in person and ask. And then you also don't feel like you're getting phone calls with people asking your claim number or your social security number that you don't totally trust. So the resource center is great. Does everybody know about the SBA loans that are being offered through FEMA? Yeah. Okay. I see. Okay. I'll give you just the short version. So SBA, Small Business Administration, you don't typically think of in disaster circumstances, but they are partnered with FEMA to provide loans for people living in this designated disaster area. And they're worth considering, but they're definitely worth applying for, because if you get approved, you don't have to take the money. So it's a zero risk situation just to apply for the loan. But you've got to get the loan applications in by March 10th. So that's something, if you're interested in, you want to move on. I went to an Altadena community gathering Wednesday night at the La Cañada Congregational Church. There was an SBA rep there who was really helpful. And he had the details on what the interest rates are going to be, the amounts, all of that stuff. So if anyone wants more specifics, I'm happy to share. But I mean, we personally are going to apply for it. And then you have time to decide whether you want to take on a loan or not. Yes.
So for residential, which is what most of us are, it's 500,000, anything it's 2.38%.
It is 500,000 for structure and up to 100,000 in personal contents on top of that. And I think it's 2.45, but it's something,
Right. Well,
yeah.
it's 2 million at 4.45.
Exactly. Yeah, it's up to 2 million for businesses. So that could be a brick and mortar business, or it could be a home-based business.
Could be around.
Yep, it could be, it's pretty broad. You know, you could run your web-based business out of your house and you had business disruption and you have accounts receivable due and invoices you need to pay. And so it's certainly worth applying for to give yourself that option. So FEMA and SBA in my head are kind of partnered together because it's tied to one claim number. So once you start your FEMA claim, that one claim number will be your same SBA number. So that's also another reason to go in person because it's just streamlined. And we already had FEMA fraud on our house. Somebody put in a claim under my husband's name within 2 days of the fire. So we all have to guard against that. Luckily, they were able to flag that number as fraud and open a new number, but none of us are safe from that. Obviously, on the dark web, my husband's address, name, birth date, and social security number were available for someone to be able to do that. So another thing we have to guard against. The third piece of, you know, availing ourselves of resources is Red Cross. So Red Cross also has some resources available, and their window is closing, I think, February 15th. So it's worth logging on, seeing what they might be able to do for you. I know some partial cash assistance, but they also have tents available too. So not to overwhelm us, but I think these are the things we need to kind of have on our checklist first, is just to take care of things that have a timeline associated with them. So the next piece that is a big question and is about, you know, how are we going to recover monetarily is litigation against SCE. And I'm going to introduce Pat so he can talk to you, but I want you guys to understand my relationship to Pat, what I do professionally, and what the consortium of law firms is. So this is Pat McNicholas, and Jerry was actually telling me, it's Jerry, right? Jerry was telling me, Pat, that he knows your brother, Matt McNicholas, through work with the LAFD.
Don't hold it against me.
So Matt, Pat's brother, went to law school with my partner, Eric Kingsley, who couldn't be here today. And we've known these guys a long time. It's a trusted relationship. They have an excellent reputation in LA. They do a lot of police liability work, LAFD work. They do a lot of wildfire work. And the way that this relationship came about, I think, is really unique. And I know we're all on guard, feeling we wake up and we open our social media and there's 10 ads from law firms that we haven't heard of. And I'm getting them too. And I'm a lawyer who does complex litigation, and I haven't heard of most of these law firms. So you gotta be on guard. It feels like everybody's coming into the neighborhood. And I don't want anyone to feel that way about me or our team. So it's important that I explain to you how this came about. I told you before, we evacuated on Tuesday night. We were at the Residence Inn. We had made a reservation the night before because of the winds. My husband had gone up to the house, as I told you, and I was with my daughters at the free breakfast, getting our oatmeal, you know. My mom was going to come help and pick up the girls. And you could just tell who was evacuated because people were ghosts walking around in the Residence Inn in pajamas, you know, hair not brushed, just ghosts of themselves. And we all just started talking over our toast at 8 o'clock in the morning. What street do you live on? People, we didn't know if our houses were standing or not at that point. Nobody knew. And it was just, I live on this block. Have you heard anything? I live on this block. Have you heard anything? Most of us met for the first time and realized we lived blocks from each other or half a mile from each other. And we were just crying and hugging and realizing the connections we had. And my girls saw an older girl that went to their school and they were starstruck to see a middle schooler, you know, a high schooler now. She's in ninth grade now. Thank you for the fact check. So a neighbor came up to me and said, I have the photos. I said, what do you mean? And she pulled out her iPhone and she showed me 6 photos, which we now have all seen. But mind you, this was Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. and they were the photos of the fire under the transmission line. And my stomach just dropped and I thought, oh my gosh, it was Edison. Like that was my instinct, right? And I got the girls safely to my mom's, and I actually had to go charge my car somewhere because, you know, I have pajamas and no charge in my stinking car battery. I'm bawling in the car. I call my law partner. The woman had given me permission to share the photos. I made sure that was okay. And I texted them to my partner and he said, do you want me to make the call? And I said, yes. And I knew exactly what he meant. And the call was to Pat. So we patched Pat in on a 3-way call. I think you were in an elevator lobby, Pat, weren't you?
It's where I spend all my time now.
And I said, Pat, I have these photos. And you were like, oh my gosh. So we sent the photos over to Pat and we didn't look back. Honestly, we didn't look back. Pat has extensive experience, but I trust Pat. And Pat has worked with a team of 2 more law firms many times before. So this team has 4 lawyers in it. My firm, Kingsley Szamet, Pat's firm, McNicholas and McNicholas, another local Pasadena firm called Becker Law Group. You may have seen that name around too. And then the 4th team is Singleton Schreiber. And I'll let Pat speak to that. But Singleton has been involved in wildfire litigation 20, 30 years. And, you know, they are already in the courtroom in this matter. I mean, cases have already been put on file, and Pat can speak to why. I've been asked, you know, why are people rushing in and filing? And the important reason is access to courts and access to justice, right? You've got to get initial matters on file so that you can rush in and get injunctive orders and get relief that we need. And Pat can speak to that. So that's how this relationship came about. And there are other law firms out there that have experience. Pat and I are not interested in naysaying other law firms, but you just have to be careful that you find a team that you like and trust and has experience. And I think what we bring is the local and the experience all together. So my business cards have my cell phone on them, and I am a call or a text away from you. I am a coffee away. I am going to be a plaintiff in this litigation along with you. My family has damages. So I want to know what's going on. What's the timeline? When are we realistically going to see relief? I am a victim of the fire too, and I have skin in the game. Pat was a victim of the Woolsey fire in 2018 with a partial loss to his home. So he has been through this. Pat was evacuated for 3 weeks and barely just got back in his house. So we're not lawyers from New York coming into LA to participate in the wildfire litigation. That's not what this is. So that's, I think, something more that I'll let Pat speak to, and let's test the audio and see if this modern tech works. So Pat will speak for a little bit, and then I'll stay around to answer any and all questions that might remain if Pat has to hop.
Okay, well, Kelsey, thank you very much for the generous and kind introduction. Very much appreciated. And just to echo a few of the things that you said, the local representation is really important. and I'm in another hotel and I just stepped in a room to do this. I do spend most of my time in hotels right now. So, first of all, today it's really all about all of you and how you can get through this extremely difficult period in the best possible manner. So, Kelsey has asked me to address in particular the litigation aspect of this. And she's absolutely correct that local representation is important for a number of reasons. One, the local knowledge that Kelsey brings and Todd Becker, who's another member of our team at Becker Law Group, um, is really important because you all will have granular knowledge that we will not have, like where to go to find FEMA, who to see to get you your alternative living situation under control. All of these little things, contractors for your debris removal. It's really important. It's also important because you need to know, understand, and support each other. You'll begin to have a pretty good understanding as to what the timeline's going to be. So, first of all, I'd like you to know that generally it takes about 24 to 36 months for the litigation to take place. And by that, I mean for you actually to get paid in this. Sometimes the litigation can string on for other reasons, but we're talking about for you to get check in your hand. And again, it's important that you investigate the lawyers that you're looking at to represent you. So a lot of these people, as Kelsey pointed out, they're not really even from California, so they brand themselves as things like wildfire lawyers, LA wildfire lawyers, because they're not from Los Angeles. But it is important because these people are going to come and they're going to go. Kelsey's not going anywhere. My firm's not going anywhere. The Becker Law Firm's not going anywhere. We're in it for the long haul. All that said, we have filed a lawsuit. We have an extremely high degree of confidence that it's going to be successful and that Southern California Edison is going to be held accountable to pay for the damages in this case. If we didn't believe that, we wouldn't have brought the case. So, for example, I'm actually in a hotel adjacent to the Palisades where the Palisades fire occurred. We're doing town halls here, not because we're bringing a lawsuit, but because my kids grew up here, their school burned down. We have family and friends and colleagues who've lost their house. So we're helping them navigate the litigation without the lawsuit piece, which is really tough. In your case, we do have the lawsuit case, which makes your road to recovery much easier and most likely will allow what I refer to as restorative justice, which means you should be made whole. So the bottom line is the purpose of this lawsuit is to make you financially whole. Your insurance will likely cover about 50% of your loss. This lawsuit bridges the gap between what your insurance does not pay and what your actual damages from the fire are. So, for example, if your damages are $1 million, your actual economic out-of-pocket damages, we're not talking about emotional distress. So if it's $1 million, generally, on average, your coverage will provide you with about 50%, $500,000. So in this lawsuit, we'll seek to recover, as this example points out, the $500,000 that you would normally be short. So as you're going through this process, understand that nobody should touch any part of your insurance money. No lawyer, nobody should take a percentage of that. There may be some situations where you want to employ a public adjuster, but if you have a total burn down, you should get your whole policy and you shouldn't need that. So, how do we recover all the money? Obviously, we had to sue Southern California Edison, which we've done. We're in court. Kelsey pointed out that we have certain things that we're doing right now, which was to give Southern California Edison a preservation notice so that they preserve the evidence in and around where the fire started, that they preserve the evidence, which is part of their electrical system where anomalies or events on their lines are recorded. And we know that they occurred because there's independent laboratories, for example, Whisker Lab, which independently recorded surges and other events on their lines right at the time of the event. So, what can you recover from this lawsuit? You can recover all of the damages that you're going to have to rebuild your house. You're going to likely be short with the total burn down. So we get a rebuild report from a contractor who will say it's going to cost X amount of money to rebuild your house. And we submit that as part of your demand package. So for example, if it's going to cost, again, for ease of reference, $1 million to build your house, your insurance will probably cover 500,000. We employ the experts to ensure that you get full value on your recovery. Other things you're going to want to recover for, your out structures, your fences, if you have a swimming pool, all of those things are recoverable in this case. Your vegetation, which is normally your garden, your landscape, recoverable. Your alternative living expenses, and this is a touchy one because depending on how long the rebuild takes, you could exceed your alternative living expenses. So if you do, we recover that for you. All of your personal belongings, you should get 100% of your contents from your insurance company. But for most people, that will be short. So we recover that also. In addition, and really importantly, we recover your emotional distress, which is a generic term which doesn't do justice to what you've all been through and will continue to go through. So in order to capture those damages, we have a system in place. We have between these law firms, a couple hundred people that work on these claims to submit for your individual damages. We call those demand packages. Part of the demand package is a narrative about your experience in the fire, where you were, your evacuation, all of these little things that each and every one of you have had to go through and will continue to endure into the future. So that's really important. And it's really important that you know that you have local law firms that have the experience, that have the in-court chops, that have the financial wherewithal and the labor and experience in place, because each and every one of you has an individual claim. While there'll be a lot of similarities, they're still individualized, and we have to prepare each case individually. And right now we're representing up and down the state about, I think, 15,000 people. Collectively, between our three firms, it's significantly more than that. But we're prepared to do it. We've been doing it for a long time, and we're going to make sure that we get it done in this case. Particularly, you will have a team leader who will be the manager of your case that you can contact by way of phone, by way of text, by way of internet, so that we can respond to all of your requests. Now, again, the advantage of having local counsel like Eric and Kelsey is, so this week I got a call and she said, hey, some of our clients haven't heard from our team, and it's been 48 hours. So she alerts us because she has day-to-day contact, and we get people back in touch with our clients because it helps you and it does help us. But that's the type of information that we need, and that's why it's super helpful to have someone like Eric and Kelsey involved. And I will tell you that it's our policy, once we sign a case, that somebody from our, what we call the welcome team, should reach out and touch base with you within 24 to 48 hours. And if that doesn't happen, we have people like Kelsey letting us know that that's an issue so we can do it. At the end of the day, we will make a demand on your behalf based upon what your actual damages are. And again, we'll include a figure for both your emotional distress and for attorney's fees, which we have asked for in the complaint. So the way the relationship works between each individual client and your attorneys in this case is it's a contingency fee agreement. So you don't have to come out of pocket, you don't have any risk, and we take it out at the back end of the case. Every client has to approve their own settlement. So if you don't like it, you say you don't approve, you don't have to settle it. It's your case and it's your choice. So at the end of the case, if we resolve the case, and I have 1,000% confidence that we will do so, and that you'll be satisfied with it, we then apply our fee percentage. So again, for ease of reference, if the amount's $1,000 that we settled the case for, that's not a representative figure. I'm just doing it because the math is easy. The 25% which we're charging would be applicable to that. So on the 1,000, that'd be $250,000. Now, additionally, there are going to be certain case costs. And there's two types of case costs. One, with respect to liability, that's holding Southern California Edison responsible. In those cases, it's going to be common to all of the plaintiffs throughout the litigation. So it's expensive because it'll be millions of dollars, but because it'll be spread throughout all of our clients, the cost to you will probably be in the low thousands. In addition, we have to develop the damages in your case. So we have to have a build report so that we know how much it's going to cost for you to rebuild your house. We need to know what the vegetation, the landscape is going to cost. So we have experts who will be particular to each person's case. And we anticipate that in this instance, it'll be a couple $1,000s. So you can anticipate that the individualized cost will be pretty low. We anticipate 2, maybe 3%. It's low by way of reference and by way of experience. So for example, if someone settled a case for $1 million, we anticipate that the cost associated with that, again, it's individualized, but will be roughly about $10,000. The larger the case, obviously, the lower the percentages, because the build report's a build report, and it's not going to be a huge difference in that. So the bottom line is we are doing this to make up the difference between what your insurance doesn't pay and what your actual losses are. No risk to you. It's a 25% flat fee. And I would like to point out that we dropped our fee as low as we could possibly drop it from the inception. And, I know there's reports of people charging up to 40, 45%. Then a lot of other firms have a low entry rate, and then it escalates throughout the life of the case. So in our case, it's just a flat fee. It never goes up from the moment that you sign it. So all of that, there's really no risk to you. We have a high degree of confidence that we're going to be successful. And with all that in mind, if you have any questions at all, I'm happy to answer them.
See a question right there. Shout it out.
So I got a few. So your fees were one of the questions. So is that
All right, hold on a second, Pat.
Let's make sure. Hello, hello.
okay? So the first one were the fees, right? So is that a yearly statement that comes out on what you intend or have spent for that year? And then the second one would be replacement against insurance. So I think I wrote that wrong, but basically, do we have to itemize all our everything in the house, whether, because I'm a tool guy, right? So I guarantee you I had between 70 and $80,000 in tools just because I did everything, right? And then you said there's a team leader. And then also, is it that team leader, do they double as a public insurance adjuster or against the insurance company?
Okay, so with respect to the first part of your question, we generally don't send out statements on an annual basis for a few reasons. One, most clients don't want them. If you want anything from your file, you are welcome to request it. We'll get it for you. The other reason is because of the accounting, it gets spread
Yeah.
not only over our clients, and we anticipate, having, a couple thousand clients, that it's really hard to account for it. And then we have to coordinate with other law firms who are litigating the case. So we'd have to get it from them to see what their costs are that are being spread over the entire, um, you know, umbrella of the population of cases. But it's your case and it's your file. So if you want information from it, we can get it for you. But I can tell you on an individualized basis, the costs will be pretty low, like in the thousands of dollars, even if you recovered, $1 million. So
Was,
that
was your question about costs or attorney's fees, just to understand the question?
Attorney fees.
attorney's fees,
Well, no, it's an open book, right, as an attorney fees, because you got it throughout your firm, throughout your.
Right. So in that regard, there's going to be no annual statement or statement of billables or anything like that, because as Pat was saying, it only will come out at the end. So if your settlement is $10,000, the attorney's fees are 25% of that, and it won't change if you get a settlement a year in or 3 years in.
And then what about a representative against our insurance company? I think that's what I had written down. Do you guys do that, or?
I think Pat, he's asking about, do we have access to resources if people need guidance in how to deal with their claims adjuster?
okay, yes, absolutely. And since you raised that question, which is a really good one, also understand that your insurance company does not take any part of your recovery in this lawsuit, because we're only going for the delta, the gap, the difference between what your insurance company pays and what your actual loss is. Your insurance companies will file their own lawsuits in this case. So they're going to sue Southern California Edison to get their money back also. So that's number one. And then the second part of your question, do we help with your insurance? Yes. We help you with your insurance because we need that information as part of your demand package. So we have to know how much insurance is paid, what they're paying for. So yes, we help you with that. If there's two other situations where this can generally come up for a lengthy period of time, and that's with respect to your personal property. So the personal property, number one, you're entitled to like 30% right off the bat if you have a total burn down. Normally, what the insurance companies will do is then extend an offer so that you can have, for example, 60 or 70%, and then they're going to want you to waive your rights. So don't waive your rights. If they want to give you 60 or 70, you can take it, but we suggest you don't waive your rights for any reason. And we don't want you to sign anything that says this is my total loss, for example, for personal property, because that would then cap us in the lawsuit. So this is sort of a long-winded answer that yes, we do help you. Yes, because it's necessary in the lawsuit. If there's a certain situation where a public adjuster becomes necessary, which we usually don't recommend if you have a total burn down. I did meet with some public adjusters today because there are certain situations where it may be applicable. But if we think it would be helpful and it's in your best interest, we would be happy to recommend one to you. So otherwise, we work with you. Now, the other situation is where you need a bad faith attorney. And if such is the case, we would recommend that to you. But again, those are more outlier situations than the day-to-day interaction with our law firm.
I think, Pat, you have a little bit of an unstable connection on your end.
You calling me unstable?
Let's take a pause. All right, now you seem to be back. So I think that was really helpful. And did it answer your question? I think the question which I'm hearing a lot and Pat can speak to is the overwhelm. And what if you get a settlement offer 2 weeks from now and you don't know what to do? Can you reach out to someone on our team and have it looked at by your case manager and then, escalated to an attorney if that's what you need? So what is the access to resources that we can provide, Pat, when people don't know how to navigate what insurance is offering?
So you'll have a case manager that you can contact anytime. That'll be assigned to your case. So people always ask, well, is this going to be my case manager throughout? Probably not, because it'll be like 2 years, and sometimes what we have is fellows from law schools that participate who've been doing this for, a couple years, but eventually they go and they take the bar. So you could have 1 or 2 case managers. That's not unusual, but somebody is available to answer your questions because they've been answering these questions for years now, especially your insurance questions. But the one thing I do want to say is don't sign anything that says this is the totality of your damages. So we'll work with you, don't sign anything, and we'll make sure that you max your insurance benefits.
And it also speaks to what we were talking about before, that it's okay to take a beat, right? It's okay. We all want some solutions and to move towards resolution, but we've never done this before. I don't need to choose my remediation company in the next 2 weeks. I can get multiple bids. I can pause the process so that I feel like I'm making decisions in the best informed way, getting advice if I need it from my team. And I even feel it too, it's not one who wants to act it out. We also make decisions when we the best and is that. And a way to
Kelsey?
On adjusters on the total loss, is that just completely waste of time, sort of?
Did you hear the question, Pat?
Yes, I did hear the question.
Is it an adjuster, a public adjuster, when you have a total situation, essentially just a waste of your money? Are you giving away money?
I would say yes. There may be certain situations where a public adjuster is necessary. I think that's usually going to be on the personal property. Otherwise, if you have a total burn down, you're underinsured. Everybody knows that. The insurance company knows that. So I think it's a waste, and you're just not putting all your money in your pocket.
And it seems like our connection's breaking down a little bit, so we can also let Pat go, and I'm here to answer specific questions too, about anything that you guys might have. But Pat, any close? Oh yeah, one more question.
Is there a time frame from when you receive a settlement letter? I mean, 'cause I have no clue. Do
Do you have
to
a,
respond or?
if you get a settlement letter from
From
your
the insurance,
insurance
yeah,
company,
yeah.
is there a timeline by which you had to
To
respond?
respond, yes.
Did you hear that, Pat?
Yeah, so the general rules, it's just reasonable, and you're going a reasonable amount of time. So you're not under the gun, you're not on the clock. And as Kelsey mentioned earlier, take your time, make good decisions. You can consult with us, but no, you're not going to be under the gun to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, any closing remarks, Pat, before we let you get back to your other folks?
Well, just thank you, and it would be an honor and a privilege to represent you. Again, this is in our backyard. We're going to be in it for the long haul, And I just wish each and every one of you all the best and Godspeed for a super rapid recovery and rebuild.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
So as Pat was saying, the reason that they're doing the town halls in the Palisades is to let people know that they're not going to be proceeding with litigation. So I think those town halls are also hard because people are realizing that they don't even really have this opportunity to potentially make up that delta. They don't have a public entity to go after for emotional distress damages. So when we're all trying to look for bright spots like the community and the connection, I do think that that's another bright spot. You know, money doesn't make any of us whole for what happened, but that's our civil justice system, right? The wrongdoer has to pay money to the victim, and that helps the victim rebuild, restore, and move forward. And here we literally have to put one foot in front of the next, one brick on top of the next brick, and we need money to be able to do it. So it is a powerful tool here. But yeah, I think like Pat said, this is not a sales pitch or anything like that. Take the time that you guys need to get to know us, meet with some other law firms, go to some other events and see who you think speaks to you. For me, like Pat said, it's an honor of a lifetime to literally be representing my neighbors across the street in this fight we're all going to be in together. And I am a phone call away. I'm here for you guys. I have so much information about public adjusters. I can tell you what I'm doing with my insurance company. I can share the info, and it is available whether you decide to work with us or not. My goal is to just be a resource for information. Yes. So we represent the owners of the home. We also represent renters. Renters have claims as well, powerful claims, obviously not, they weren't the owners of the building, but they have personal contents and emotional distress. But in specific response, all of the individuals in a household should be filing a claim. So if it's a 4-person household, for example, husband, wife, 2 children, the husband would sign a retainer, the wife would sign a retainer, and you would sign on behalf of the children as well. The guardians sign, because the children have personal contents losses, emotional distress losses. So everyone in a household signs, and that's one of the things that happens in our welcome process. We have everyone accounted for. Was there a sister living with you? Was there a parent living with you? Were there people, living in your ADU? We want to make sure that everyone is covered. Yes.
So you explain the bad thing of insurance companies, because I know from friends of mine that some insurance companies are being very helpful. They're finding them places to live. They're letting them sign leases for 12 to 18 months. I know of other ones that are saying, we're not going to let you sign a lease for more than 6 months. And I've heard to the grapevine which ones are good. I've heard that Allstate's good. I've heard that AAA is good. I've heard that State Farm is not good. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think there are 3 main buckets, and then the third bucket gets more complicated. So the first bucket is if you were uninsured. And we know that there are a lot of households and families that were uninsured because they owned the house outright, and it wasn't something that they kept up on. We know that there were people that got dropped within months up to the fire and didn't get, weren't able to get a new policy in place. So the uninsured folks are kind of one situation. FEMA is going to step up a little bit more with those folks, but obviously their potential damages are going to be significant because they're getting from insurance is nothing. So that's one bucket. Second bucket is folks who are on the California Fair Plan. So those folks are dramatically underinsured by the nature of what that plan offers. And those people are having a phone call back. So we have some, advice and tools that we can offer there if you're one of those folks. The third bucket of people are some of your larger insurers that you're talking about. And I will speak to bad faith. So my advice there is stay on top of them and be your own relentless advocate. Leave voicemails, send emails, and document everything, because they are not doing you any favors. So if you hear one thing from one person, write it down in a document or send an email, because me too, could get a new adjuster 3 months from now who says, oh, I don't have any notes that was said to you in the system. So we need to protect ourselves in that regard. I can tell you, I pitched an absolute fit a week ago, and I said, I want a new adjuster assigned immediately. And I said, in writing, I do not believe that State Farm is acting in good faith. And well, did I light a fire, because somebody was on my property 2 hours later inspecting the property. So I have some of those tools because I'm a lawyer, right? And I know some of the magic language, and I'm professionally annoying, right? That's my job, is to get on the phone and yell at people and pick fights. But not everybody has that level of confidence, and we're all navigating this. And even with the level of confidence I have, I'm thinking, is that right? That doesn't sound right. Why, why this? So speaking to that, I think one of the most powerful tools is using what's publicly available against the insurance companies. So we now know, for example, if you have a standing structure, that the timeline they're saying is 12 to 18 months. So we need to be serving that back up to our adjusters. They are saying it is going to take 12 to 18 months to complete phase 2. I do not feel it is safe to move home before a minimum of 12 to 18 months. What are you going to do for me, insurance company? And just keep at them and just keep at them. That was my approach. And last Saturday morning at 7:30, we got the approval to sign a 12-month lease, because I just kept harassing them and using what is publicly available against them. Bad faith is when a insurance company intentionally tries to not pay out on claims that they know that they rightfully should. So that is a step later down in the process where you ultimately hire a bad faith lawyer to sue the insurance company for acting in bad faith. So nobody's there yet. It's way too early to know. We have an in-house bad faith lawyer who's excellent and has been doing this for 30 years, but it's way too early in the process. So right now, it's the community. It's calling your neighbors and saying, hey, did farmers approve this? We got 12 months approved. Go fight, go use this. And I think that that's how I'm hearing that the insurance companies are finally kind of starting to make some movement on doing the right thing.
Month to month, State Farm's only give you 4 months. If you sign a year lease, they will give you that a year to, I think they said 16 months of coverage,
Yeah. But if you don't feel comfortable signing a 12-month lease without getting approval, that's your right. And just force them to give you approval, and they're going to do it over the phone, not in writing. So then you send that little email. Thank you so much for that phone call where you gave me approval to sign a 12-month lease, and you've protected yourself.
Our adjuster said, oh, no, we're only going to do month to month with you, because we don't think it'll take that long to abate all the toxins in your home and have the repairs done. And I said, you just said it. You don't know how long it's going to take. And I said, I want a 6 to 12 month lease. And he said, no, we're going to do this month to month. So now, should I ask for a new adjuster? Should I tell them that that they've said the lease 12 to 16 months?
You absolutely should. You should say that I want to talk to your manager, or I want a new adjuster. I know, and you can use this from me, I personally know of 3 State Farm families who are in my situation who have gotten a 12-month lease approved, and I do not accept this. And that's what you have to do. And that's why the word of mouth is really important. And that is how we got it done. I bumped into a family at a hotel that lives blocks from me. And he said he just got a 12-month lease approved by State Farm. I thought my head was going to rotate 360 degrees on my body. And I like stomped upstairs and called the adjuster and was like, I just bumped into Nate Copeland in the hallway and he got 12 months approved. And they were like, okay, lady. So like, you just have to advocate for yourself because they are not doing us any favors and it's exhausting. So if you have absolutely every right to ask for a new adjuster. And if your adjuster is not working with you, you need help. Yeah.
It's a game and you gotta be better than they are.
But the name of the game is to wear us down. The name of the game is to wear us down. And it's gonna come in the form of lower settlements for total losses. It's gonna come in the name of playing games with rentals and lease agreements. It's going to come in the form of, I think, yes, personal property, contents losses. I think they're looking at billions of dollars of losses. And so they think they can stop the bleeding by squeezing here and there. Yep. Yep.
Someone protect themselves now, in my case is a total loss. But for my those that live in other areas, protect themselves for anything in the future, insurance wise.
Like, you mean kind of lessons learned from this disaster?
Yeah, like what should they look in their policy? What can they do to have a better coverage or they're not under insured?
So
finding out
it's a really good question. And I have personal experience with this. So my father had a single house fire in 2007. So a spark caught in the fireplace onto a couch and the house went up. Actually, the same house that we live in now went through a renovation because of a house fire, coincidentally, totally unrelated to any of this. So I saw him go through that process. It was a painful process. And he dealt with what some of us are now also going to be dealing with in total loss situations, where your insurance proceeds are written to both you and your mortgage lender, and you have to deal with that. He went through that process, so I have some personal knowledge of that. But it empowered me to then, when I was a homeowner, go out and get a policy and push for every possible cent that State Farm would give me. And I just happened to be State Farm because that's who wrote my first car insurance policy when I was 16 years old. Like, I have no loyalty to State Farm, and I got on the phone and I was like, I want max coverage on everything, max coverage on everything. And I'm still dramatically underinsured. So there's nothing that we have done wrong. It's the name of the game in insurance. And it's not just Altadena that is dramatically underinsured. It really is all of LA County. So the best practical advice is you get on the phone and push for maximum potential coverage that you can, see what they're willing to do. In the end, you have to obviously weigh what your annual premium is against the additional coverage you get. If you sit down and do the math, it probably makes sense if you can afford that premium. But if you never have a disaster of this scale, then you're never really needing your policy.
Right.
So it's nothing anybody did wrong. It's nothing that we weren't taking out our policy. And I had someone say, well, should I have been checking my coverages every year? We still wouldn't have known. And they still wouldn't have offered policies that actually did make us whole. So the best advice is just get on the phone, ask for the max
Maximum
coverage you can.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. Well, I hope this was helpful and informative. I know people have things to do on their Saturday afternoon, and I'm really grateful for your time. I'll hang out if you want to ask me a personal question. I'll hang out if you want another margarita. That's okay. Let's, put it on the corporate credit card. I'm happy to do that. And we're going to be doing these every Saturday for 2 weeks until it becomes unhelpful. So if you have friends, what? Every 2 weeks.
All right, that's it every Saturday.
Did I say that? No, every Yeah, we're planning them at least through February and March. If attendance drops off or they become unhelpful or they're wildly popular because we have margaritas and El Portal, we'll keep doing them. But the goal is to be helpful. So thank you for your time. If you need access to any of these things, you know, realtors, ideas for telehealth therapists, if you want to talk to a public adjuster just to see what they have to say, I can help put you in touch with some trusted people. So access to resources and sharing information is the name of the game. Yes. Churros coming in in the next 10, 15 minutes if you guys want to. If you want to stay for churros. Yeah. Oh, let me give him this before I lose it.
Looks like my brother joined at the very end.
Can tell I'm not a good salesperson because this was 101. He said, well, if we want to sign up, how do we sign up? So I'm not a closer. So if you guys are interested in working with our firm, just reach out to anyone here. You can text me. Juliana over there is our Eaton Fire intake coordinator, and she will get a retainer emailed to you. You will see my law firm on it, Pat's law firm, the whole team. We have physical ones you can take and review and ask me questions about. If you're I know them, I like them, I trust them, you want to sign right now, you can do that. But electronically or in paper. And again, take it home, review it. And if you want to call me in a week and say, I have questions about it, I don't understand it. That's what we're here for. So thank you, Jerry.